Orders she won't obey. After narrowly escaping prison thanks to her cop uncle, rebellious Riley Rivers is sent to a military boot camp designed to break the worst young offenders. She's not interested in structure or submission until she meets Lieutenant Mason, the cold, inflexible officer whose voice commands a room and whose eyes burn like wildfire. But beneath Mason's emotionless facade lies a man caught between duty and desire. As Riley tests every boundary of the camp, the rules, and Mason's patience, tension ignites in a way that could ruin them both. Episode 1. I pressed my nose against the cold glass and watched as the fields that used to be full of life and color, with fresh green grass and huge sunflowers, turned into open brown spaces with nothing but mud hills and trenches. We were miles away from civilization, but the car's wheels kept turning, taking us deeper and deeper into the void. Should we come in, Riley? I looked away from the window and into my uncle's rearview mirror, where I saw him. There was a hint of amusement on his face, he was enjoying my pain. I squinted and kept my lips straight so he wouldn't be happy with my reaction. But he thought my silence meant yes. In just a few seconds, his finger had flipped the switch on his dashboard, and the car came to life, making loud siren sounds that shook my eardrums. I looked away from his vibrating laughter and back at the road. This time, a steady blue light reflected off the dark tarmac floor. It followed us all the way to boot camp. We saw a group of soldiers marching in a straight line as my uncle drove down a dirt road. There was not a single body out of place, not even a little bit. The pack stayed together and in line. I hid in the back seat of the patrol car, but my uncle slowed down on purpose so he could see me better. Jesus, Riley, you really messed up this time. There's no way you're going to get out of this. You'll be in jail in no time. My uncle had no problem sharing his thoughts and doubts. He pulled up next to two men. One of them was older, but you could tell that he was still in good shape. The other person looked about my age, maybe a little older, but his whole body screamed that he was fit. Both men wore the same thing, green camouflage pants, a tight green t-shirt and tan boots. My uncle unlocked the door and opened it so I could go outside. I got up and stood there, staring at the older man who looked strong enough to be in charge. Riley Rivers, the newest member. My uncle shook hands with both men. The older man walked around me, looked me up and down, and then went back to the front. His hair was short and grey, and he combed it back so that it stayed in place. His features were sharp, and his scowl looked like it would never go away. His dark eyes made him look like he was in charge and powerful. His behavior alone was likely enough to make grown men cry. The younger guy didn't move at all. His eyes were looking straight ahead, and his hands were still tightly behind his back. He was like a robot, and he was the most beautiful robot I had ever seen. His jawline was sharp and his hair was light brown, almost blonde. The style was short and tight, with no hair out of place. Lieutenant Commander. The older man pointed at the younger man, who didn't move a muscle or even blink. Commander. He pushed his strong, hard thumbs into his own chest. His voice was deep and loud. Look down, Rivers, he yelled, spitting saliva as he spoke because he was so angry. I looked down at my white trainers and saw that they had already picked up some dry dirt from the floor. I was annoyed and my mouth twitched. I sighed quietly so that neither man could hear me. Uncuff her. He spoke directly to my uncle, who finally turned the small key in the lock that held my wrists together and let go of my hand. Of course, I held onto each of my wrists to get rid of the numbness that the heavy handcuffs caused and pulled my eyes back up to look at the commander. "Eyes down, Rivers," he yelled, making my whole body jump. I looked down right away. "You must not look directly at any ranking officer unless you are told to do so." He blew on a whistle, which made me want to look up again, but I fought the urge. "Lieutenant will show you to your home." "Okay," I said to my shoes. The commander let out a long sigh. "Look at me, Rivers," he yelled. I looked him in the eye. He had his 4 fingers on his forehead, like a salute. "Sir, yes, sir. Do you understand?" "Yes." I spoke without confidence, and his face got angrier with every second that passed. I swear the other guy had the tiniest twitch of amusement on his lips, but it went away just as quickly as it came. "Sir," I said nervously. My uncle laughed next to me, and I shook my head. "Yes, sir," I said to myself. The commander shook his head at me in frustration. "Move out," he yelled as he stepped back. The younger guy, who I had convinced myself was a statue by this point, relaxed his stance a little and started walking away from the commander in a straight line. I jogged a little to keep up with him as he walked ahead of me. I kept my head down, but that didn't stop me from stealing glances at the beautiful statue. His outside was very hard, and everything about him seemed impossible to get through and off limits. His eyes didn't show any emotion, and his face was always blank and cold. His back was stiff and out of reach. There was no doubt that he was a robot. He took me to a big wooden shed, but before we went inside, he turned over some charts that were stuck to a clipboard on the front of the building. "Shower block," he said softly, pointing with 2 strong fingers at a small brick building across the street. "Your allocated time is at 400 hours. You must only shower at the time your schedule allows because showers are shared on a rotation of living quarters." "Okay," I said, not really paying attention. I've never been good at following the rules, which is why I went to boot camp. He hit the floor with his heavy tan boot and looked at me with eyes that made me feel like I was going to fall in love. "Rivers, you just earned yourself 5 more laps around the track tomorrow. Stand up straight, look down, and show your lieutenant some respect." His voice made me act right away. I remembered the dumb phrase I had to use to respond to the higher UPS. "Yes, sir." "Cafeteria." He pointed to a bigger brick building that wasn't too far from the shower block. I looked at it for a few seconds before lowering my eyes again. "Ladies' toilet block." I looked again to see where he was pointing. And last but not least, the staff quarters, which are completely off limits to criminals. "Criminals?" I asked, looking up at him with a smile on my face. "Yes, that's exactly what we were, but I never thought he would say it so openly, especially since he had been so professional up to that point." "Soldiers." He corrected himself, and then his face hardened again. "You just earned yourself 10 more laps tomorrow for looking at me and questioning me. Eyes down, soldier." I hated him so much. He opened the door to the shed and walked in. The room was long and empty. There were 8 single beds in a row, two on each side wall. There was a brown fiber blanket on each bed that looked like it would be uncomfortable and itchy. There was a girl at the foot of each bed. They all wore the same clothes, camouflage pants, a green t-shirt, heavy black boots and a thick belt. They stood still and straight, staring blankly at the space in front of them. None of them looked at us with their eyes. They put their hands on their foreheads to show respect. The lieutenant came into the room and stopped in front of each girl for a second to look her body up and down before moving on to the next. Not a single girl moved or looked him in the eye. Not a single one of them stood up to him. He yelled at the last girl, "Your boots need to shine more, Rogers." "Yes, sir," she said right away. He then stood at the back of the room, raised his own hand in a salute, and yelled, "At ease, soldiers." The girls dropped their arms and relaxed, but just barely. They still kept their eyes on the front. The lieutenant told them in a loud voice, "Riley Rivers, the newest recruit." He took a stack of freshly folded uniforms off the bed and gave them to me. "Uniform. Bed. See you at 500 hours." I saw him almost march out the door and slam it shut behind him. At that point, everyone looked at me. Hi. I waved awkwardly at the room. As soon as I was alone with these girls, their postures changed completely. Some took off their boots, others untucked their t-shirts, and some took off their bras. They all relaxed. A few of them flopped back down on their beds and started talking again, showing no interest in my arrival. "Riley, I'm Sierra. Do you need help unpacking your things?" asked the girl in the next bed. She had small features and dark hair that made her look cute. I was about to say something when another girl cut me off. "Don't let her help, she's a known thief." "I'm Raven." She reached out to shake my hand. Her shake was strong, and her hand and fingers were covered in tattoos. "What are you doing here?" she asked as she flopped down on the bed next to me. I thought about not telling anyone my story, but then I decided to do it anyway because everyone, like me, had to go to this boot camp by law. They probably understood better than anyone else because we had all done something wrong. I was sort of involved with a gang, narrowly escaped jail because my uncle is a cop and was friends with the judge. Instead, I got sentenced to 2 years of boot camp followed by 2 years of community service. I didn't say much and just shrugged as I unpacked my things into a big trunk next to my bed. I didn't have a lot because I wasn't allowed to bring a lot. "So this is your first time at boot camp?" Sierra asked as she looked over my things. I nodded. "You can tell by what you've brought," she admitted with a small laugh. "I brought a lot of clothes, including makeup, and different outfits. In short, I packed for a vacation camp, not a boot camp for people who are in trouble." Raven said, "For future reference, bring 1 pair of pajamas or comfortable clothes and a whole suitcase of snacks. The food here is awful, and the activities will make you wish you were in jail." Sierra nodded in agreement. I sighed as I remembered that the good-looking lieutenant had added 15 more laps to the track, whatever that meant. I didn't go to the gym or eat healthy, on the other hand. I would watch a lot of Netflix and eat way too much food. I was sure that this boot camp was going to be the last nail in my coffin. "I already got 15 extra laps from that robot," I said through gritted teeth. Sierra asked in a high-pitched voice with a flirty smile. Mason? The lieutenant? I nodded again. He is so beautiful. It's such a shame, she said with a sigh. Why is it such a shame? I asked, now that I was interested. Too bad he's so mean. He doesn't usually like people, and they promised him he wouldn't stop any of the recruits, another girl shouted from across the room. Wait, have people tried to trap him? I sat down on my bed, which felt like spring. I knew I would feel every lump and bump in the thin mattress. Many. They get sent to prison, 3 times, and you're taken away. Maddie is right, Mason is so far off the radar that it's almost not worth wanting him, Sierra told me. Name one girl who doesn't want him. He's hot and scary, and that authority makes me wetter than the Great Barrier Reef. Another girl joined in on our conversation in a rude way. I don't, Raven said in her defense. Yet, because you're as gay as they come, the same girl yelled. Raven just nodded in agreement. Sometimes, when we're on the pitch and he's yelling at us like that, I like to picture him. I bet he has a really long one, skinny and long, Sierra said. I tried not to smile as the girl from the Great Barrier Reef came over to our bed. No, long and thick. Who wants skinny? It's all about the girth, the girl said, making a wide circle shape with her hand. Raven shook her head in disbelief. I think of him too, she said. When he's really mad and making you do extra because he says you didn't try hard enough, I picture. She wiggled her little finger at us. There was laughter all around the room, even from the girls who didn't want to talk to us. Seriously, Riley, there are a lot of bad boys here in boot camp who would love to sneak around with you. Some of the lower-ranking privates will even fight you if you want to. But the lieutenant won't let you get close, and don't even try. You'll be taken away in a police car before you can say guilty. By the way, I'm Amber. I wouldn't dream of it, I said softly. A bell rang outside our shed, and everyone got up. It's time for dinner. Get dressed quickly. Sierra fluffed her hair in a blurry mirror and walked to the door. I quickly put on the army trousers that were given to me. I couldn't make them look nice or even a little bit better, but I put on my black tank top and ran to the cafeteria before the dinner bell rang. There wasn't much in the big hall. There were blue tables all over the floor, and men and women were sitting at them eating white slop off of plastic plates. I quietly sat down next to Sierra and picked up my spoon. I asked, "What is this?" as I let the thick paste fall from my spoon a few times before I was brave enough to take a bite. "Don't ask, I'm not sure," she said. I looked around the room, and everyone was eating without any problems. I saw the lieutenant leaning against the wall with his arms crossed over his muscular torso and his foot bent at the knee behind him. His dark eyes slowly looked around the room to make sure everything was in order. Until they found mine. I felt a flutter in my heart. I don't know if I was nervous because I had been caught looking at him or because he was so hot but out of my league. I swallowed and kept my blue eyes on his. His eyes got sharper, and from across the room, they told me to look away, but I didn't. I looked into his sad eyes. His eyes were a beautiful shade of mahogany brown, even from across the room. Almost amber-colored, especially when the sun shone on them. His eyes looked kind, but his personality was full of danger. He had a sly smile on his lips that made me feel like I was going to die. It was a smile that told me he was going to make me pay for standing up to him. But I still couldn't stop looking. I was used to breaking all the rules. I never did well with people in charge, but for some reason he made me want to test him. I would act up to make him angry and show him who was really in charge. A lowly lieutenant in charge of hundreds of training army recruits, or a girl from a small town who held up a convenience store with her gang leader ex-boyfriend. I couldn't help but smile slowly, just like he did. He noticed because his beautiful eyes narrowed into a frown. "Lieutenant Mason, it's game time." I wish I could say I was very warm and comfortable, but that would be a big lie. My bed made my body itch and the springs of my mattress hurt my back. But when the alarms went off like an air raid siren, my eyes opened wide and I jumped out of bed. "Are we being attacked?" I screamed in a panic. Raven laughed and rubbed her tired eyes. "It's 4 in the morning, the first light of day, and it's our turn to shower. You better hurry up. You only have 5 minutes to wash and shower before we have to leave and go to the field." She grabbed her shower caddy from the side and walked to the door. 4 in the morning. What is going on? Why would anyone want to get up at this time? I got out of bed, picked up my clothes, towel, and shower caddy, and put them all in one place. I'm slowly walking to the shower block. A queue of my roommates was outside, and I dragged myself to the back of the queue, where I waited patiently for my turn. There were 3 small brick cubicles in the shower room, each with a moldy blue shower curtain hanging in front of it. I stepped inside and was very aware of how dirty the floor probably was because I was barefoot. Then I turned the silver shower knob to let the water flow. I yelled, moving out of the way of the running water and falling back into the curtain. "Yeah, it's cold," Raven said with a laugh. "Cold? It's freaking ice water." I stepped back behind the curtain to hide me from the other girls. It took me a few seconds to get the courage to go back under the water. I chanted to myself, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," as I quickly washed my body. I chose not to wash my hair. It didn't need it, and I couldn't stand the water on my skin. I went outside and wrapped the towel around myself. After me, another girl took a shower, and I got dressed with my teeth chattering and my body shaking. It didn't take long for me to eat 1 apple and then wait in a muddy field with the other recruits. There were hundreds of them, all standing in a queue and looking straight ahead. Some of the guys were checking me out, but I can't say my own eyes didn't wander either. It was a group of people of both genders. "Attention!" Lieutenant Haughty yelled from the front. The people in queue stood up straighter and raised their arms in a salute. I copied them, but I probably didn't do it as well as they did. He walked between the rows and stopped at each person to look at their uniform. Then he came to me, and I slowly raised my eyes to meet his. He almost missed it, but his whole body froze and his eyes opened up a little bit. They were alive with a burning flame, but it wasn't like the warmth of a hearth, it was more like a wildfire that was getting bigger and more out of control. Mason blinked slowly and then moved on to the next person. I thought he would call me out for not being respectful, so it surprised me when he didn't. I didn't expect him to make up for me going too far. He yelled orders at us from all sides in the hot August sun. making us go through a very hard obstacle course. We climbed over, under, and through mud. We lifted heavy things, climbed ropes, and ran the track over and over. I literally went beyond the feeling of dying and just landed dead. The sun began to set, and my body hurt in places I didn't even know were there. I swear I lost at least 5 stone from working out today. I need a long soak in a hot bubble bath, I said to Sierra, who was lying on her back and breathing heavily to calm down. Attention! Lieutenant Demon yelled. She got up right away, as if it were no big deal. I climbed up to mine, having trouble finding my balance and swaying from side to side. Standing up straight hurt. It hurt to raise my hand to say hello. Being alive hurt. Get out of here, he said. The recruits let out sighs of relief and marched away right away. I marched along, eager for my bed, using up all the energy I had left. Not you, Rivers, he yelled. Fall out of line, he said, pointing to his side. He waited until the pitch was empty and it was just me and him. His eyes searched my body with kindness, and I could barely stand up. He laughed to himself, which was so unlike him that I was interested. He straightened up and cleared his throat, as if he remembered who he was. The smile left his face completely. He was back to being both stern and in charge. I would tell you to be at ease right now, but you're not standing at attention, he said in a stern but quieter voice. I said, you have my full attention, what do you want? I was too tired for his bullshit. I wasn't following the rules, I was looking right at him and my attitude was anything but obeying. He didn't like it. You owe me 15 laps. His usual loud voice was back. Are you kidding? You almost killed me out there today. I can't do 15 more laps, you can kiss me. He raised his eyebrows in surprise, then stepped closer, towering over me with height and closing me in with his ABS. That's enough, Rivers. Neil Armstrong would be able to hear Mason's voice without having to strain his ears if he were on the moon right now. Because it's your first day, I'm going easy on you. But you disrespected me, so you need to finish your 15 laps or you'll get in trouble. I looked at the track, which was very long and scary. I would definitely be out here for another hour. I can't do it. I'm too sore and dirty. I need to take a shower and go to bed. My voice sounded desperate when I spoke. I begged, thinking that he was definitely going to win this. I'll show him who's boss game. You can only shower at 400 hours. You have to finish the laps, I can't back out of a punishment. I really didn't think I could do it, my legs felt like they weren't connected to my body. He was asking for the impossible. I'll run with you, he said, and for some reason, I thought that would be even worse. I nodded, letting him take control of me. I ran, but my legs didn't move much. People watching me right now would think I was moving in slow motion. Mason yelled from a few yards ahead, pick up the pace, Rivers. I can't do it, I said, taking a break on my third lap. He walked back to me. It needs to be finished. We'll walk. He motioned for me to start again, and it hurt to move my feet against the ground. He walked right next to me for a whole lap, and we didn't say a word to each other. 10 more to go, he said with a smile. I groaned, and I swear I saw him smile somewhere in there. Boot camp isn't that hard, you know. It'll be easier when you're in better shape, but for the love of God, learn the rules or you'll always get punished. I didn't answer him because his voice bothered me. I wanted to go to bed. Don't look at anyone. Always keep your head down unless you're standing at attention, in which case you should look straight ahead. I instinctively looked at him, and he shook his head in disbelief. It's just human instinct to look at someone, so I can't be taught. Don't answer back, he said again. Say sir, yes sir to everything. Always wear your full uniform when you're around ranked officers. Don't break the rules. Do you have any questions? I looked up at him again, and his eyes glowed with anger because I couldn't just do what he told me to do. Is it true that you can't see new guys? What? He backed down, clearly not expecting my question. He turned red all the way up to his ears. I asked again, did you really promise not to sleep with the recruits? He ran his finger along his short stubble and then straightened his face to show no expression. I'm not talking about my personal life with one of the soldiers, he finally said, keeping his voice steady. He acted bored, which was a reaction in and of itself, especially since he was blushing. With one of the criminals you mean? My lip curled up into half a smile and his eyes narrowed at me. 7 laps left. You can run the rest and clear out when you're done. I'm signing off now. I saw him cross the track, and his heavy boots made a thudding sound with every step. I left the track and went back to the living quarters without finishing my last laps. I waited until he was far away before I left. I heard the private talking to the general about the bar a mile west of here. I thought this was a rural area, civilization ceased for miles around. Amber was telling Maddie. I could really use a drink after today, I said as I flopped down on my bed, which didn't feel good at all. The girls laughed like I had told them a joke, and I propped myself up on my elbows to look at them. Maddie said, we can't leave campus, Riley. Yeah, but we're criminals. When have we ever followed the rules? They looked at each other in shock, as if they'd never thought of that before. Amber asked, what would we wear? I smiled because I knew I had brought a whole suitcase full of useless clothes. Pick one, I said, pointing to my trunk. I'm going to check out the staff showers. I have a feeling they'll be a lot better than ours. I grabbed my shower stuff and left. A security guard was sitting in a small office next to a fence. It kept the criminals and the officers apart, but when I was limping back from the track earlier, I saw a hole in the hedge that would let me sneak through. They didn't have sheds, instead, they had small cabins. There was a main shower and toilet block, which made me think that the small cabins were just for sleeping. I quietly made my way to the shower block and slipped inside without anyone seeing me. There were real doors instead of curtains, and it was much cleaner than ours. There was only one shower room. It had a shower cubicle and a nice dressing area with a big mirror, a sink, a hair dryer and a unit. I opened the door to the left of the showers because I was curious, but all I found was a toilet, so nothing too interesting. I stepped into the shower and looked at the lever. It had a choice of hot or cold, and when I turned it on, the warm water bounced off my skin and relaxed all of my sore muscles. It was like heaven. I took my time washing my hair with the shampoo and rubbing the soap on my body. I liked the little bit of pampering I had found at this terrible boot camp. After that, I got out of the shower and blow-dried my hair, which straightened out and shone beautifully. I opened the door and stuck my head out to see what was going on before I really left. It was dark outside now, and everything was quiet, so I quickly left, ran through the bushes, and got to my own place in no time. When I opened the door to my shed, girls were throwing clothes around, standing in their bras, and putting on makeup. They were excited, and we had more than just Maddie and Amber on our one-bar crawl. We split up into small groups so we could walk around the grounds without being seen. But we did leave the boot camp and turn left down the dirt road until we reached a small country house pub. It was a cute little building with white walls and potted flowers out front that weren't very easy to see at night. We opened the door and were surprised to see that it was very busy. This was probably because it was the only pub in the area. We pushed through the crowds and went outside to the beer garden, where we sat because it was such a nice night. I quickly noticed that it looked like the workers were all gathered there. There were farmers who worked in the fields, lower-ranking people from our boot camp, people from the small houses next door, and of course, the store owners from the tiny village 30 minutes away. There was a live band playing inside, but we could hear them from outside. They sounded pretty good, but not good enough to play a game. "Hey little lady, can I buy you a drink?" A man in a lumberjack shirt came over to our table and put his arm around me. He spun a piece of wheat around his mouth. I sat down and talked to him for a while about farming and taking care of animals. He seemed really into it, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings by telling him I wasn't interested. "Get your coat, you've pulled," Sierra joked. "I have to go to the toilet," I said. I got up and pushed the door open to go back into the bar. It didn't seem any less busy than before, and maybe it was even busier now. I went into the bathroom to fix my hair and eat a few Tic Tacs to freshen my breath. Then I left, pushing the door right into someone's arm. "Sorry," I said politely, looking up and seeing those cinnamon colors. I winced all over my face, as if I was in pain, and my features were almost screwing together. He, on the other hand, looked really angry, but he looked great. I looked down, not out of respect, but because it was so strange that he wasn't wearing his army clothes. He wore jeans. Jeans. And a grey Hilfiger hoodie made my mouth water. "Am I in trouble?" I asked with a hint of shame. He grabbed my arm tightly and pulled me through the crowd, leaving the bar. "Oh, you are in so much trouble." I thought he would take me back to boot camp, but instead he threw me across the parking lot. "Are you stupid? This is a court-ordered boot camp. You can't just leave whenever you want. When the commander finds out about this, you're going to jail." I could tell he was holding on to that anger for a while. It must be really tiring to keep your feelings hidden for so long. Bury them deep so you don't get any frown lines or look angry. So don't brown-nose your commander by telling him. I shrugged and tried to get away from him, but he pulled me back hard. "Jesus! You're getting on my nerves so much. I tell you not to do simple things, but you do them anyway. Do you like making me mad?" He was so angry that steam was coming out of his ears. "Is this guy bothering you, little lady?" The lumberjack from earlier came back, and I turned to face him before looking back at Mason, who completely ignored him. "Yeah, he's really bothering me," I said quietly. The lumberjack hit Mason's jaw before I could think or do anything. He didn't even blink, but he hit him back right away. The lumberjack fell to the ground and was knocked out. I couldn't believe it when I saw him. I fell to the ground to make sure he was still breathing. "What, Mason?" I yelled. "Mason." His voice was slow, and he sounded out his own name. It tasted like something I hadn't had before. Since when did we know each other by name? And that's when I remembered that I had used his real name. The name I think of him by. "We're not." I stood up and held my arm out so he could take it. "Bring me back to boot camp, back to your boss." Of course, I only let him take me back because I knew there were 7 other escaped boot camp recruits sitting in the back of the beer garden, completely unaware of what was going on. He looked at my arm, and my heart sank when he grabbed it and pulled us away from the bar and back towards the boot camp. As we drove down the dirt road, I said, "I don't get it." He huffed, but then he looked at me. He said in a bored voice, "I would ask what, but I know you're going to tell me anyway, so why bother? We're alone, and no one knows I'm out. I haven't done anything wrong or hurt anyone tonight. Why does it matter if I don't get caught?" He stopped in the street and let go of my arm. "You criminals think it's okay to do bad things as long as you don't get caught." He was so angry that his teeth were gritted. "If you hate criminals so much, why do you work to make them better? You seem to think that there's no redemption and that we all belong in jail." He ran his finger over his stubble and a strange, never-before-seen look crossed his face. He finally said, "I'm not going to talk about my personal life with you. You're too outspoken for your own good," he said, raising my eyebrows in question. "From now on, you will be the perfect soldier. Stand up straight, work hard in the field, shine your boots, don't look anyone in the eye and most importantly, don't talk back." He stood up straight and became more stiff, just like he did today on the field. Full of professionalism, with no sign of anger anywhere. "Your commander will have me arrested tonight, so you won't have to worry about that," I said quietly. I saw his eyes quickly look at me from the side, but only for a second. "Unless, of course, you don't tell him," I said, taking a chance. "God, why do you think I'll treat you differently? You're not a diamond in the rough." The rage had come back. He couldn't hide how he felt about me, so it was clear he didn't like me. Everyone else thought he was a brick wall, a robot with no feelings, but when I was around, he would either explode or leave in a huff. I didn't answer him because the thunder was so loud that it broke through the sky. "Great," he said in a sarcastic tone as the rain fell hard on us. "This is your fault." I really did laugh. How is the rain my fault? He must have known how silly he sounded by now. "It's not your fault that it's raining, it's your fault that we're stuck in it." He stopped yelling and turned his head all the way around to look away from me. He coughed. "You're, the rain and your top." He said this in a low voice. I looked down at my white top. It was completely see-through because it was wet, fabric stuck to my skin, making everything very clear. Mason let me see his back, but he wouldn't look at me at all. He acted like the devil was going to kill him for accidentally seeing me through my t-shirt. I said to him, "You're a grown man, it's just me." He took off his jumper and held his arm back for me to take it. "Put this on, I can't take you back like that. People will see." I smirked and didn't take his hoodie. "Maybe I shouldn't put it on at all. Then you'll come back without me, and I could go back to the bar and your favorite commander will never know." He shook his hoodie at me, but he still kept his whole body facing away. "Put it on now, Rivers," he said in a commanding voice, as if we were back on the pitch. "I was going to take your hoodie because you were trying to be a gentleman, but now that you're basically telling me to do it, I really don't think I will." I bit down on the side of my gum to keep from laughing. He turned around, and his whole face showed how much he didn't like it. He didn't look at me, he kept his eyes straight ahead like a soldier. I think I heard him say "So help me God" in a low voice, but I'm not sure. "Rivers," he growled, sounding like a warning. He waved the hoodie at me again when I stuck out my chest. "Put it on," he said through clenched teeth. This time I laughed but didn't try to move. "Okay, fine. If you say please, I'll do it." His temples moved as his jaw muscles tightened. He said, "Riley," in an annoyed tone. "I guess we can call each other by our first names again." He took a deep breath and said, "Put it on, please," with great reluctance. "And that's how Lieutenant Mason died?" he asked me nicely. "He died from it." "Well, since you asked me so nicely," I said. He ran up to me, lifted one of my arms into the air, and pulled the sleeve down it. Then he did the same thing with the other arm, getting me dressed. I couldn't stop smiling at him, but he wouldn't look at me because he was trying to keep his eyes away from me. He looked more at ease once my chest was covered, and I wondered if his fear of my body came from his promise. We walked onto the boot camp grounds, and he kept going past the staff quarters, where I thought the commander would be. "Because it's your first real day, I'm going to assume you didn't know not to leave campus. Instead of taking you to the commander, I'll just give you 10 extra laps tomorrow and tell you never to leave the grounds again." "But I'm serious, Riley, get your act together or you'll be thrown out." I nodded my head. I really didn't want to do extra laps tomorrow, but at least I was happy that I wasn't going to jail for another day. He walked me to my room and then stopped outside and hovered. "Oh right, your hoodie." I remembered while he stood there awkwardly. I grabbed the bottom of his hoodie and started to pull it up. "No," he yelled. "Not here," he said in a panic. "Just keep it," he said more calmly now. I laughed and said, "I'm not keeping it. Come in and I'll change into something else." He looked at the wooden door of the shed and then back at me. "Without warning and for no good reason, I shouldn't go into the soldiers' quarters." "Oh, it's fine. No one is here," I said without thinking. "What?" he yelled as he ran past me and pushed through the door. I went inside after him, feeling bad for being so dumb. He quietly looked around the room, as if he thought everyone would jump out and yell surprise. "Where are they all?" he asked, turning to me, but he knew as well as I did where they were. I made my face look like it was hurting again. "Is this going to get me in a lot of trouble?" 20 more laps, he said coldly. 20. I yelled. 30, he yelled. I took off his hoodie right in front of him, and his eyes got big as he saw everything that was available. He turned away, red-faced, after a moment. I think you should go now before I lose my legs. He took the hoodie and turned around, keeping his eyes straight ahead. You have no idea how bad this is getting. I've never seen anything like this before. I won't let it go on like this, there needs to be a line drawn. I nodded to show that I understood, but I really didn't know what he was talking about. People must have snuck out, talked back, and refused to follow the dumb boot camp rules. We are criminals, after all. Mason walked to the door without looking back. I lay down on my bed, closed my eyes, and let the silence of the room take me away. The scariest sound ever made my ears hurt and burned me from the inside. I pulled my head under the itchy blanket and grumbled into my sheets. Get up or you'll miss your shower time, Amber said under her breath. I waved her away with one arm out from under the blanket. I'll shower later, when the water is warm and the blow dryer works. She laughed. You'll get caught, she said as she left. But I wasn't going to get caught. I'm careful, and why would the staff shower at night when they can do it during the day when they have hot water all day? I closed my eyes and enjoyed the extra hour of sleep. At 5 in the morning, I heard the sirens again. I didn't want to get out of bed, but I did and put on my camouflage pants, green t-shirt, and combat boots. I walked to the field while still fixing my belt. Everyone was already doing a drill for marching. Before I looked up at the soldiers, I spent a few seconds messing with my belt. Halt! Mason yelled, and everyone stopped in a straight line. He turned to me, and I remembered my manners. I stood up straight and looked ahead, with my 4 fingers on my forehead in a salute. I'm doing great today, Mason said in a deep voice that was loud enough for all 7 continents to hear. You're late, Rivers. I noticed that he was calling me by my last name again instead of my first name, like he did last night. Sir? Yes, sir, I said, but it sounded more like a question than an answer. Drop and give me 20. I laughed out loud, and people behind him looked at me in shock. Wait, you're not kidding. He leaned in close to my face. Nose to nose. Eye to eye. Lips to I'd like that. Does it look like I'm joking, Rivers? Drop and give me 20 right here, right now. He yelled at me so loudly that it scared me. I got down on my knees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I pushed my body up and down like a baby. I had no strength in my arms and could barely do a push-up. He watched me struggle, my face getting redder and redder, my arms shaking, and I was having trouble breathing. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I could feel my body getting heavier and heavier because I wasn't fit. The push-ups I did started to look like belly flops. Every time I did a push-up, I fell to the ground. He made me keep going, though, and it was very embarrassing for me. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. My hands hurt because of the pressure of the grass underneath, and my wrists hurt because of how hard I was holding my body. I gritted my teeth and clenched my jaw as I tried to get through the last obstacle. 16. 17. 18. 19. 20. I jumped up and looked at the piles of people who had stopped. Luckily, their eyes were forced to stay looking ahead. Thank goodness they didn't see me try to do push-ups badly. Mason, on the other hand, looked as serious as always. That was pathetic. Get in line, he said in a mean way. I tightened my belt and fell in line, marching to the sound of his constant call. He led us to a lake that looked like a swamp and smelt like dirty water. There were 2 ropes over the water, one high and one low. Cross the lake, he yelled. Mason told us to go across based on where we lived. We watched as people slowly crossed the lake, holding onto the top rope and keeping their feet steady on the lower rope. The ropes moved, but it was all about controlling your mind and working together as a team to keep the ropes as steady as possible. Most people were able to cross the lake without falling in. Good job, Mason said. Then it was our turn. Maddie was the first to step on the rope, and she only moved a little to the left. After that, Sierra went up, then Amber, and finally Raven. I joined in the middle, and Zoila and Elise came after me. It was very hard, but we were doing well and got halfway there pretty quickly. Mason stomped on the lower rope with his foot, which made the rope move all over the place. What's wrong, ladies? Are we feeling a little weak today? He joked. Amber grabbed Raven, who grabbed me, and before I knew it, we all fell like a stack of dominoes, jumping into the dirty water below. Climb out, you failed, Mason yelled, his voice full of anger but his face showing that he was having fun. It's no surprise we failed. What? You did that on purpose, I yelled as I pushed my way through the wreckage to get to him. There were a few gasps from the groups, and Amber put her hand on my arm to try to stop me. Mason yelled, Rivers, drop and give me 20. No. I said back. He took his walkie-talkie out of his pants and spoke into it. Red Dog is calling for Black Sparrow. A response came right away. This is a Black Sparrow answering a Red Dog's call. General, I need a disciplinary for Rivers right away, Mason said in a calm and professional tone. He looked down at the floor and told me again to drop and give him 20. Do I need to write 2 disciplinary slips for Rivers? I shook my head. Then drop and give me 20. I looked down and didn't look him in the eye. Sir, yes sir. I said, and then I dropped to the floor and gave him 20. I was miserable because my body hurt, I was wet with smelly water, and I was generally miserable. But what really bothered me was that he had actually punished me. That was something the judge gave me, and if I got 3 of them, I would go to jail right away. He let all of us go home after another long day in the field. Rivers, 30 laps. I stood at the starting line and didn't look up to see his face. And in a matter of seconds, I was running, and with each step, I could hear the squelch of my sock inside my boot. I wanted to cry, but I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. He didn't walk or run with me today, he just stood back and clicked a dumb thing to count how many laps I did. My thighs hurt from the wetness of my trousers, and my body felt heavier because of the wet clothes I was wearing, but I wasn't going to let Lieutenant Arsehole see me fail. I ran away from him without looking at him or trying to talk to him. I just pushed through my laps, quietly and painfully. "Riley," he said, and hearing my name on his lips made me so angry that I could feel my blood boiling. I said sharply, "You don't get to call me that." I think he was a little surprised by my outburst, but his face stayed the same as always. "Rivers," he said, standing up straight. I looked down at him and treated him like my lieutenant because that's all he was. He let out a big breath. "I'm just doing my job." He tried to smile a little, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've done my 30. Can I go?" He nodded his head quietly, so I turned away from him and walked across the track. I felt his hand on my arm as I reached the door. "Wait." I turned back to him, but then I remembered I wasn't supposed to look at him, so I looked down. I waited for him to say something, but there was only the sound of the wind blowing in the quiet. He sighed again and said, "Never mind." I turned my back on him and went to the living quarters, where I really needed a shower. The assault course was really the devil's playground, and you don't want to mess with the devil at 6 in the morning when you haven't been up long. "Come on, John, my 90-year-old grandma can do better than that." Mason yelled at one of the men who couldn't army crawl through thick mud while stuck under a giant net that he couldn't touch with his back fast enough. "Get out of the way," his loud mouth yelled. He spoke from his chest, and his voice was so loud that it could move the sun around the earth faster than a day with just a push from his strong sound waves. It was very hard for me to climb a huge fence, and then I stayed at the top. "I hate this man," I told Amber, trying to catch my breath. "This whole boot camp is just some shit where the men can oppress the women and he's the worst." I pointed down at Mason, who was at least 10 feet below us. He yelled at us, "What are you two women talking about? This isn't a social event. Get down on the other side." Amber smiled at me and said she was sorry before climbing down. I looked down at the ground. There was a thick mud pit under the fence I was sitting on. There was soft, clay-like mud there on purpose to break our fall. I bet it was deep enough to cushion a 10-foot drop. If I threw myself into it, it would probably splatter everywhere. "Lieutenant, sir, may I speak?" I asked in a sweet voice. He looked up at me, put his hands on his hips, and made a scowl. "Okay, Rivers, you can go. What do you want?" He sounded annoyed, as usual. "I can't climb down, sir." He closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath to calm down his growing anger. I sucked in my lips so I wouldn't smile. He moved closer and tilted his head back to look up at me. "Why can't you climb down, Rivers? Either start climbing or I'll call in another disciplinary." He crossed his arms over his chest. People climbed up the 10-foot fence, gave me a warning look, and then climbed down the other side, as they were supposed to. I sat on top, still, and held on to the fence for dear life. "I don't like heights, sir," I said. "Jesus Christ, Rivers." He rubbed his stubble and moved closer. "You got up there, you can climb down." I looked over the edge to see how close he was to the mud pit. He had to get a little closer. "I can't," I yelled. He moved closer. Bingo! I let go of the railing and jumped. My feet hit the mud pit first. I was right to think that mud was everywhere. He ran his hands over the lieutenant's dirty face and flicked thick, wet mud out of his eyes. I heard a few people laugh around the assault course. Mason stared at me and breathed in and out slowly. Am I going to get in trouble for this? I asked, feeling bad. I lied because it was an accident. 5 extra laps of the assault course, Rivers. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending that wasn't done on purpose. Now get out of the pit and get moving. He said this through gritted teeth, making it clear that he didn't like me. I fought my way through the mud and then shook myself off on the grass. I think it was a bad idea because now I'm dirty and wet, but seeing him dirty too made it all worth it. I saw him flick dirt off of himself or give his clothes dirty looks every once in a while. I laughed at how uncomfortable he was. He kept me back for 5 more rounds of the assault course after boot camp. I rolled my eyes because I just wanted to get them over with. I crawled through the mud, climbed over fences, shimmied up a rope, and ran through tires, and it wore me out. I was dying by the 3rd round. Come on, Rivers, speed it up, Mason yelled out of boredom. Hey, you! I stopped next to him and poked my finger into his iron-like chest. He looked down at it slowly, but other than that, he didn't react to what I said. I swear to God, Riley. He shook his head and took a deep breath through his nose. You're out here every day telling us what to do. I bet you couldn't or wouldn't do this yourself. I pushed him with both hands into his chest, trying to knock him back, but he didn't even move. So I tried again, but this time he stopped me by grabbing my small wrists with his 2 huge hands. What don't you get? He said in a low voice. Do you want to go to jail? He asked me, really wanting to know. No, you know this is what I do for a living, right? I didn't say anything. I literally get paid to keep you in line and make you do all of this. You need to be ready for the fitness test or they'll send you away. He kept a tight grip on my wrists and pointed his head towards the assault course. If you step out of line, it's my job to tell the judge. You're here because you avoided jail, so now you have to behave. If you don't, I'll have to tell the judge that your boot camp isn't working. He let go of my wrist, and I let my arms drop to my sides. You have 2 more rounds to finish. Yeah, 2 more rounds of an assault course that you don't have the guts to do yourself, I said under my breath. Forsake Riley. He clearly heard me. Oops. Hold this. He took off his walkie-talkie belt thing and gave it to me. It was surprisingly heavy. Don't do anything stupid with it, just hold it. I looked down at it and wondered what he wanted me to do with it. He ran towards the 10-foot wall and jumped almost halfway up. Then he used his hands to pull his body the rest of the way up. He didn't have to use the hand and foot holes like everyone else. Okay, I'm not going to lie, that was kind of hot. He climbed down on the other side and expertly ran between the tires, never missing a step. He crawled through the mud on his stomach, not letting his back or torso touch the ground or the net. Wow, he did everything so quickly. Most of the time, it took me half an hour to finish the whole course. Then he climbed up a single rope that was hanging down like Spider-Man. He fell to the floor and slid down the rope like a firefighter on his pole. I wanted to have sex with him right then and there. He finished the whole assault course in less than a minute and didn't break a sweat. He was like a god. He came back to me, took his walkie-talkie back, and put it back where it belonged, around his waist. "Finish your 2 rounds, he said, and that was all he said. My mouth was slightly open in shock that I had just seen what had happened. "Riley," he pointed to the assault course. "Okay," I said slowly, but I didn't move. My feet stayed where they were. After that short workout, it looked like his muscles had gotten even bigger. His green shirt fit him perfectly, and his arms were like gluts. It was a beautiful sound when Mason laughed. He looked younger when he laughed, which wasn't very often. "Riley, all punishments must be done. I can't change my mind about that. If I give you a punishment, you have to do it." I nodded. "Go," he said with a grin, pointing at the obstacle course again. "Okay." I said it again, but this time I moved. It was embarrassing to put on the display after his, but at least I got it done. "Okay Rivers, get out of here." He said this after my second round, going back to his lieutenant voice. He gave me a salute, and I gave him one back. Thankful to leave the field and wash off all this mud. I was able to get into the staff quarters without getting hurt again. I ran straight to the shower block because I really needed to get out of these wet clothes and clean my hair and body. I took off all my clothes right away, put them in a plastic bag, tied the top in a knot, and threw it on the floor. After that, I opened the shower door and turned on the water to warm it up for a few seconds while I used the bathroom. I looked at the palms of my hands while I was sitting on the toilet. They still hurt from lifting my body up and down the 10-foot fence. Blisters were starting to form on the friction burns that were covering my skin. When I was done in the bathroom, I opened the door to the toilet and felt the warm steam from the shower. I smiled to myself, knowing how nice and warm this would feel after the terrible day I had. I heard the commander's voice talking to someone on the other side of the door as I walked to the shower. The door handle started to move. I stood still, not knowing what to do. I was in a shower block that was off limits. I was already on my first punishment, and if I got caught in here, I would definitely be sent away. I looked at the door to the shower. I could hide in there. The commander would probably see and hear that it was busy and then leave. The door handle shook again, this time it was pulled down, and I opened the shower door and stepped inside as quickly as my sore legs would let me. I put my hand over his mouth. He looked like he had seen a ghost, shocked, pale, confused, and angry. It was really the most human I had seen him yet. We looked at each other in silence as the water fell on us. I could feel his frantic breaths hitting my hand through his flaring nostrils. He must have gotten in the shower while I was on the toilet. It was hard, but I was able to keep my eyes on his face. I did notice that he still had his dog tags on a chain around his neck. The commander yelled from behind the shower door, "Mason, are you in here?" I closed my eyes and made my face really tight because I knew I had just messed up so badly. I knew I was going to die, but I had to let go of his lips and wait for him to tell on me. He didn't want to answer right away and looked at me with scared eyes, as if my face alone could explain things. Instead, it begged him in silence to keep me safe. "Yes, sir," Mason said, sounding a little surprised. "Okay son, let me know when you're done," the commander yelled. Then the door opened and the sound of it filled the room again. Mason looked at me, but only at my eyes, and I looked back at him. I could tell he was trying to figure out what had just happened, or what was happening right now, but he wasn't getting anywhere. The warm water fell all over us, and it dripped from his hair and into his eyelashes. The water soaked his lips and fell on his skin. His skin was bare and covered in tattoos. I started, and he blinked at me with a blank look. "Riley, I swear to God, if you ask me if you're in trouble for this, just save yourself the trouble because the answer is always yes, yes." I sucked in my lips and took a deep breath through my nose. "Actually, I was going to ask," he said, clenching his jaw in anger. "Should I be looking down right now?" I had to hold back a smile at how scared he looked. He turned off the water by grabbing the knob with his hand. Reaching out and grabbing his towel. He was going to wrap the towel around his own waist at first, but then he sighed and gave it to me. "Cover yourself," he said in an annoyed tone before leaving the cubicle. I couldn't decide whether to follow him out and listen to him yell at me or turn the water back on and finish the shower I came here for. I was already in trouble, so what was a few extra laps or push ups? My hand hovered over the water lever. I turned the water back on. I heard him yell, "What are you doing?" from behind the door. I didn't pay attention to him and just put the shampoo in my hair. "Rivers, get out, now, or I'll give you another punishment." I bent my back and let the warm water flow down my body as I dipped my head back into it. Then I took the conditioner and did the same thing again. "Riley," he said in protest. "Get out of the shower right now or I'll come in and drag you out myself." I leaned my head back to get rid of all the conditioner. It smelled like lavender and made me think of my grandma's garden in the early spring when all the flowers were in bloom. The soapy bubbles surrounded my body and gathered under my feet. It gave my skin a slight shine. "Riley." I picked up the shower gel and squirted a good amount into my hand. Then I slowly moved my fingers over my body, rubbing my skin in circles. "I swear to God, Riley, I'm calling the commander back." I turned off the water and stood under the shower until my body had absorbed every last drop. I twisted my hair in my hands and waited for the flow of drops to slow down. After that, I opened the door, reached for my own towel, and wrapped it around my body. "I'm sorry, did you say something? I couldn't hear you over the shower water." I blinked at him like I didn't know what he was talking about. He looked like he was possessed. His veins popped out of his forearms because he was holding his fists so tightly. I really thought he was going to hit me at any moment, and I don't think he would have stopped there. Maybe murder. He was now fully dressed, with Nike sweats and a plain t-shirt on. I combed my hair in front of the mirror, ignoring his glare. "Are you serious?" he yelled. I looked back at him in the mirror. His face was very red, but I'm not sure if it was because he was angry or because we had just been showering together. "For once," I said with a sigh, "can't you just act like a nice guy?" His eyebrows shot up in surprise, and then his eyes softened. "Tomorrow I'll do your extra laps and push ups. Whatever you think is fair punishment. Just let me take a shower, change, and dry my hair." He looked into my eyes, and I waited for him to let me go on. I could lose my rank for this, he finally said, sounding unsure of himself. Then he nodded, which meant he had made up his mind. Under one condition. I patiently waited for him to go on. You always show me the most respect, especially when we're out in the field in front of everyone else. Don't talk back, don't refuse, and don't argue. You do what I say and do the drill to the best of your abilities. No questions asked. I don't want to hear a peep out of you, you fall in line instead of standing out from the crowd. I promise, I said with a smile of thanks. He sighed and rolled his eyes. Yes, sir, he said, pointing his head at the hairdryer to tell me to keep going. I looked at him a few times in the mirror. He looked like he was deep in thought and probably full of regrets. He turned away while I got dressed after I was done with my hair. He asked with interest, "You can get back without being seen?" "Sir, yes sir." He let me see a small smile on his lips, which made my heart race. I made him happy. He asked, "You don't want to tell me how," but I didn't want to tell him that because I knew he would stop it right away. Sir, no sir." He laughed, and I felt like I was jumping up and down and clapping my hands inside. His laugh was so cute. "You go first, and Riley." I turned back to him and said, "You tell no one about this." I just nodded in response. It's time to be the model soldier, or at least try. I want to say that I'm getting used to getting up early, but I'm not. Being out on the pitch at 5 in the morning has to be a worse crime than most of these criminals even did. But today was different, I was on my best behavior. I can't say for sure how long that will last, but I'm going to give it my all. We're splitting up into smaller groups today, going into the woods, and building a raft. It has to be strong enough to hold 4 people, and you'll be testing it out on the lake. Check your groups with Private Nolan, Mason said with the least amount of interest. So far today I've been good enough to not get in trouble. It hasn't been that hard, which is surprising. I just stay out of his sight. Amber shouted with joy, "You're with me, Riley." Just a few minutes later, 2 male recruits named Seth and Jake came over to talk to us. Jake made me feel better right away. He laughed at everything and was easy to talk to. On the other hand, Seth made me think of a hillbilly serial killer, which made me very wary. Jake was one of those guys who always had a silly smile on his face. I guess people would have called him the class clown in high school. He could have been ugly, but boot camp made even the nerdiest people look good. All of this exercise shapes our bodies into what a bodybuilder would love. Seth, on the other hand, looked darker. His eyes were empty and showed no compassion, like a psychopath. He was quiet and kept to himself, but the few things he said seemed well thought out and were said in a sly way. Jake pointed to some heavy logs on the ground and said, "We'll pick these up and put them together. I think they might sink. Won't they be too heavy?" I tried to lift one, but I couldn't even get it halfway off the ground. Jake made fun of me. The worst that could happen is that we all go for a swim. Boats are heavy and they float, so it's all about spreading the weight out on the surface so the water is heavier than the raft. He picked up the log and threw it over his shoulder. I walked right behind him, worried that he might drop it and hurt himself, but to be honest, he looked like he was carrying it easily. Seth also took one and came with us to the river, but Amber didn't even try to help. Okay, fine, but I don't want to swim, so you better be right. He dropped the log and smiled a big, naughty smile. I slowly backed away from him, knowing what he wanted. Jake, no. I laughed and ran away. He chased me, but I hid behind a tree and looked out from the side. He stood in front of the tree, trying to figure out which way I would run next. Then I ran to the left, and he jumped on me and tickled me by the waist. I was laughing so hard that I couldn't breathe and tears were streaming down my face. Maybe I should throw you in the lake, he said. You don't want to go for a swim, hey? Jake, what are you up to? Jake stopped and let me go, standing at attention. I looked at Mason and then back at Jake. I decided it was best to stand up straight as well. Talk, Mason said. Jake looked down. Sorry, Lieutenant Sir, we were just having some fun. The carefree tone Jake had been using for the past hour was gone, and he was now nervous and maybe even a little scared. Mason said angrily, "This is boot camp, there's no time for fun. You've earned 20 laps around the assault course. Keep your hands to yourself." "Yes, sir." Jake remembered. Mason walked away, standing tall and straight. 20 around the assault course, that's a bit much, isn't it? Jake relaxed his posture, and I agreed with him. The course of attack was deadly. By the time we got back to the riverbank, Seth had tied 2 logs together with some rope. The guys did the heavy work while Amber and I tied the knots. We all sat on the edge of the river and took a break when the raft was big enough. I asked them, "What made you both go to boot camp?" I already knew Amber's story. She broke into the homes of famous people and stole from them. "I ran a drug empire," Seth said in a casual way. Jake told us, "I hot-wired cars, changed the license plates, and sold them." I wish I knew how to hot-wire a car, I thought as I stared off into space. It always looked so cool in the movies, and even though I probably wouldn't use it, it would still be useful to have. Jake put his arm around my shoulder and said, "I'll teach you." "Attention!" Mason yelled from behind us. We all jumped in fear, but we quickly got to our feet and stood at attention. "You're just sitting there," he said, pointing. I was about to say something, but then I thought better of it and closed my mouth. I couldn't see Mason because I wasn't allowed to turn my head, but I knew there would still be disapproval in his eyes. "Did you tie these knots, Jake? They're awful." I shut my eyes in anger. "Don't say anything back. Don't say anything back. Don't say anything back." Mason walked in front of Jake and looked him up and down. His eyes were far away and cold, with no warmth at all. I think Mason didn't like Jake personally, but let's be honest, he doesn't like anyone. "Drop and give me 50, he yelled, and we could all feel how strong his words were. Jake fell to the ground and began doing push-ups. He seemed to do them easily, which was not the case for me 2 days ago. He stood back at attention after finishing all 50, which didn't take long, and he didn't seem to have broken a sweat. 20 on the assault course, 20 on the track, and I want 100 more push-ups from you. Your team can finish the raft. Don't say anything back." Don't say anything back. Don't talk back. Lieutenant sir, may I speak? Jake asked. Permission denied, Mason said coldly before walking away. That guy is such a jerk. What did I do? Jake said. He asked, you know what, and linked his arm with mine. I shrugged in sympathy. I'm going to teach you how to hotwire a car tonight. His car. He pointed his chin at Mason. Meet me outside Shed 30 at 9 o'clock. We'll take his Lamborghini for a late-night drive. He gave me a sly smile, and I felt a fire inside of me. It was the same fire that gets my adrenaline pumping when I break the rules. But I was torn between keeping my promise to Mason to be good and having fun with Jake. Okay, Jake, that's enough. Mason yelled. I'm calling for a disciplinary slip. Jake let go of my shoulder right away. He asked in a harsh voice, for what? Did I let you talk? Mason yelled as he stormed over to us, standing tall and looking scary. Sorry, Lieutenant, Jake said, looking down. That was when I knew what I wanted to do. Mason was a jerk who was on a power trip, and I didn't have to keep my promises to him. Jake and I were stealing his car tonight and going for a ride. That idea made me very excited. It was dark outside, and the solar panel lights on the sheds lit up the numbers. I followed the lights to shed number 30. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come, Jake whispered. He was already outside his shed. He waved for me to follow him, and we quietly went through the hedge and around the staff buildings. Stop, I said as we looked out from behind the shower block. We saw the commander walk down the path and into a group of offices. We couldn't help but giggle like two bad school kids. We drove into a small gravel parking lot. The back row was full of army tanks, and the next 2 rows were full of staff cars. Jake walked past all of them and stopped in front of a gold Lamborghini. He moved his eyebrows up and down at me in a fun way, and then he looked at every square inch of the car. Jake did this out of spite. I ran my hand over the smooth, metal surface of Mason's car. I liked the Lamborghini and the color that went with it. Is he rich? I said, admiring the car. Jake said, he's the lieutenant, as if that explained everything. Honestly, I had no idea how much these people made. Jake slid a thin, black piece of metal into the window frame, and the car unlocked. He grinned at me in a playful way before opening the door. I was already impressed that the doors opened up like butterfly wings instead of out. Easy. Now you try it on the other side, he told me. I walked around the car with the metal, copying Jake's every move, but the car didn't unlock. Keep it straighter and firmer, he said in a whisper from the driver's seat. The car unlocked when I did what he said. I felt a rush of excitement go through my body. This adrenaline made my blood heat up. I got in the passenger seat and put on my seatbelt. Jake pushed some buttons on the dashboard, and the roof started to move away, leaving us both exposed to the warm night air. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.